Effects that grant a monster extra attack points is one of the most common and oldest effects in the game, and is actually a pretty weak effect, unless the attack boost is absolutely massive. In this list, we'll be going over some of the worst cards that technically have this positive effect. And at number 10, we have Hazy Flame Hippogriff. This is a level 6 fire monster with 2100 attack, which has the effect where your opponent can't target this card with card effects. And once per turn, you contribute another fire monster in order to give this card a permanent 300 attack boost. Now, this is a level 6 monster which requires a tribute summon to be on the field in the first place, or one of the many Hazy Flame support cards that can get it out a little bit easier. So, it takes a little bit of effort to get this card on the field, and the effect of just gaining 300 attack is incredibly minor, for having one of the harshest conditions you can have on a card, i.e. tributing another monster. Usually, the effect of tributing a monster is tied to really powerful effects, like how Enemy Controller allows you to steal one of your opponent's monsters with a tribute, or Ballista Squad allows you to spell speed to destroy any card in the field, and requiring the tribute to be of a specific attribute of monster just adds even more constraints to this really high cost, where only a 300 attack boost is laughably bad. It will only go up to 2400 attack on its first boost, which is only about average for the attack range of level 6 monsters, and for some reason this effect even has a once per turn on it, as if you could possibly abuse the effect, but I guess it's future-proofed against infinite combos, unlike Cannon Soldier. Really, the only thing going well for this card is the fact that it can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects, which is actually some of the best form of singular protection you can give a card, which is why it's only the number 10 spot on this list. Having to tribute a specific type of monster for only a 300 attack gain is pretty bad, but a 2100 attack monster that can't be targeted by card effects is pretty good. And at number 9, we have Master Craftsman Gamil. This is a hand trap which has the effect where, if a face-up monster you control is battling, during the damage step you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard in order to increase the attack of your monster by 300 until the end of the turn. Now, the reason this card is on this list is kind of in the similar vein as the previous card, where it's just an incredibly minor attack boost for the cost required, because you're losing one card from your hand using this, and the boost is so minor that it probably won't even save a monster normal. Just a reminder that in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, cards like Honest, which give one of your monsters extra attack equal to the full attack of your opponent's monster, rarely sees any competitive play, because that effect is kind of unnecessary and not worth running in decks that use light monsters. So a card like Master Craftsman Gamil, which has the same conditions as Honest, but can be used on any monster instead of just light, is kind of hilariously underpowered in comparison, with only a very minor 300 attack boost. If this card gave a 500 attack boost, it still wouldn't see play. If it gave a 1000 attack boost, it might be an option for casual decks. For this thing to see any kind of play, the threshold would really have to be around 1600, if that was going to be the full effect of the card, as shown by things like Blackwing Kalute the Moon Shadow, which is a Blackwing card that gives 1400 attack from the hand but only to Blackwing monsters, and was kind of really powerful card in the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! However, its effect is too slow to see play nowadays, even though Blackwings do occasionally pop up as a rogue deck. And at number 8, we have Bri Synchron. This is a level 4 tuner, which has the effect where, if this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, the synchro monster that it was used as a synchro material for gains 600 attack until the end of the turn, but its effects are negated. So, granting 600 attack to the synchro monster until the end of the turn is actually pretty good. It's the second part where it also negates that monster's effects that lands it on this list. The fact that this card is both a Synchron monster and a level 4 tuner actually goes a long way in its favor, because usually level 4 tuner monsters are just more valuable than all the other tuners. And the fact that it's a Synchron monster means it can be searched from the deck with something like Tuning and Junk Speeder. But, since it has a mandatory effect to negate the effect of the monster it brings out until the end of the turn, it's really not that great of a card. If this card was more vanilla, and straight up did not have an effect, it might actually see competitive play, which should show you something about how bad its effect actually is. And at number 7, we have Temple of the Sun. This is a continuous spell card which has the effect where all face-up monsters you control that were special summoned from the graveyard gain 300 attack. So, two things about this card. For one, it's actually incredibly difficult to special summon monsters from the graveyard normally. So actually being able to have monsters gain the benefit of this card is pretty rare, outside of certain archetypes which specialize in all of their monsters coming out from the graveyard, like Ogdoadix. The second thing, the attack gain is so incredibly minor that there's no point in playing it anyway. Like I said earlier, a 300 attack boost is not really worth the extra effort of playing a card, and should be more of a bonus added on top of a different, more better effect, like the Sanctum of Parshath. In fact, there's a field spell card that just gives an unconditional 300 extra attack to all your monsters during your turn, and it doesn't see any competitive play because it's not good enough. Although I think the idea behind Temple of the Sun is that most field spell cards at the time only provided around a 300 attack boost, and since you can have more than one continuous spell in the field, it was probably balanced around those two notions, i.e. providing about the same bonus as a field spell card, while under the notion that you'd probably have more than one. And at number 6, we have Nanana. This is a normal spell card which has the effect which can only be used on a level 7 or rank 7 monster you control, where it gives that monster 700 attack and defense until the end of the turn. So, what gets this card on this list is the fact that the attack boost it provides is incredibly minor and only temporary for how incredibly specific it is in its target activation requirements. There's a card in the game called Rush Recklessly, which is a quick play spell card that increases the attack of one monster in the field by 700 until the end of the turn. And Rush Recklessly actually saw a lot of competitive play in the past because that was enough of attack boost for a lot of monsters to beat over something else. And since it can be used during yours or your opponent's turn, it was a good way to protect your monsters or allow yours to beat over one of your opponent's big boss monsters. However, Rush Recklessly hasn't seen play since 2007, because it has since been vastly power crept by just all other kinds of staples. The card Nanana was released in 2014 in the OCG, 7 years after the last time Rush Recklessly saw any play, and is a straight up downgrade to Rush Recklessly, which is probably why Nanana wasn't released in the TCG yet, because they know how terrible the card is and are not really in a hurry to localize it. The card was made as a promotion for the 50th anniversary of TV Tokyo, so it might have been made bad on purpose, so that no one would really care if it was never localized in the TCG. And at number 5, we have Ally of Justice Garodhul. This is a level 4 monster with 1600 attack that has the effect where, if it battles a light monster, it gains 200 attack during the damage step only. So, as we discussed earlier with some of the other cards where 300 attack is incredibly minor, 200 attack is obviously even worse, and only activates against certain attributes of monsters. If you want to get the full benefit of this card, you'd have to play something like DNA Transplant to change the attribute of all your opponent's monsters to light. And even then, it would only really go up to an 1800 attack monster, where the highest attack for level 4 monsters normally, without having a negative effect, is 1900. So it still wouldn't be as strong as just a regular level 4 monster from a better archetype. There are 2 other cards in the game which have similar effects, funnily enough, Ally of Justice Rudra and Penumbral Soldier Lady. Rudra is a level 5 monster with only 1900 attack, but gains 700 attack when it battles a light monster, which is slightly more respectable, and Penumbral Soldier Lady gains 1000 attack when it battles a light monster, which is definitely the better of the 3, even though all 3 of these cards are kinda terrible. And at number 4, we have Evil Blast. This is a trap card that can only be activated when your opponent special summons a monster, where you can equip this card to your opponent's monster, and it gives that monster 500 attack, but during each of your opponent's standby phases, they take 500 points of damage. So the intended synergy of this card is that it's something you equip to one of your opponent's monsters so that they'll take burn damage every turn during their standby phase. There are other cards like this in the game already, like Mask of the Accursed and Dark World Shackles, but one of the advantage both of those cards has over Evil Blast is they don't give your opponent any kind of benefits for that 500 points of burn damage during the standby phases. Mask of the Accursed actually stops the monster from attacking, and Dark World Shackles both stops the monster from attacking, and even goes further and lowers the attack and defense of the monster to be 100. So, Evil Blast giving them a benefit for having the same effect as these other two cards, which are actually easier to use, kind of explains why it makes this list. And at number 3, we have Insect Queen. This is a level 7 monster with only 2200 attack that has the effect where it gains 200 attack for each insect type monster on the field. And since itself is an insect type monster, it immediately goes up to 2400 attack with its effect. However, this card has a negative effect where it can't declare an attack unless you tribute one monster. But during the end phase, if this card was able to destroy a monster by battle, you get to special summon a level 1 token with 100 attack and attack position to your side of the field. Now, having to tribute a card, as I mentioned earlier, is a very harsh cost for an effect. And the cost for this effect is simply just being able to attack like normal, which is pretty bad. They don't even gain extra attacks. And the token you summon at the end of your turn is a very low statted monster in attack position, so it's very vulnerable to your opponent just summoning a strong monster and attacking over it. And Insect Queen herself is a level 7 monster that requires extra resources to hit the field, and its attacking effect isn't even that good for being a level 7 monster. However, there is tons of insect support that can get this card on the field quicker, but even they wouldn't want to play this card because there's too many detriments to actually using it, where you could just use a level 8 vanilla monster to better effect instead. And at number 2, we have Bri Synchron. This is a level 4 monster with question mark attack that has the effect where all your light monsters gain 100 attack for each light monster in your graveyard. But during the end phase, you have to destroy one light monster you control, and also you can only control one face-up Bri Synchron on the field. So this card's attack is entirely dependent on the amount of light monsters in your graveyard. So unless you get a ridiculous amount of them into the graveyard, it's going to have a very low attack power value. And while it does boost the attack of all your other monsters, it's so incredibly vulnerable with its low attack points that it's a wonder why it has any restrictions at all, and that horrible maintenance cost during the end of your turn, where you have to destroy a light monster you control for no reason. And if you're able to get 20 light monsters in the grave, then this card will provide all your light monsters 2,000 extra attack, which is not half bad. But it's incredibly hard to get 20 light monsters in your graveyard, and if you do, you're probably doing something better than trying to bring out this card with its horrible restrictions. And at number 1, we have Infernal Incinerator. This is a level 6 monster which has the highest base attack of a main deck level 6 monster in the game at 2800. And since it has such a high base attack, it has all kinds of restrictions, where this card can only be normal summoned or set by discarding all other cards in your hand, and the card you tribute has to have more than 2000 attack. Then, while this card is on the field, it gains 200 attack for each of your opponent's monsters, but loses 500 attack for each other monster you control. So you're heavily incentivized to not have any other monsters on the field to gain this card's full benefits. Now, the reason this card is pretty bad is because having to discard all other cards in your hand while also still having to tribute a specific type of monster to get this card out has to be one of the worst summoning conditions attached to a main deck monster. It's very rare for cards to require you to discard all the cards in your hand, and if they do, it's usually an Infernity card, because that's the whole gimmick of their archetype, a really bad card, or a card tied to a really powerful effect. And Infernal Incinerator falls into the bad card category, because the only thing this card does is be a big beat stick on the field, but only if it's the only monster you control. Alright, and that's the list. Are there any other bad monsters that gain attack that I may have missed, or have any ideas for future videos just like this one? If so, I'd love to hear about those things down in the comments. Just a quick little aside, I launched a new Hearthstone channel recently, which has videos similar to this channel, i.e. scripted, highly edited top 10s. So if you're a fan of Hearthstone, you should check it out. Link will be in the video description and at the end of this video.